Mr. Taylor and Ms. McKesson. This meeting is a public session of the Council Rock Board of School Directors. This meeting is being recorded by the Council Rock School District and may be recorded by members of the audience. Rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bialik?
Here.
Mrs. Brooks?
Here.
Dr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Gruff?
Present.
Mrs. McKessie?
Here.
Mr. Tate?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Dr. Thorwart?
Here.
Mr. Block?
I am here. Thank you. Dr. Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Block.
Report, please.
And good evening, everyone. So this past Friday, we had the privilege and the honor of holding our graduation ceremonies at both Council Rock High School North and South. This year, we had a total of 982 graduates, 433 at North and 549 at South. We have almost 2% of this year's graduates heading to the armed forces, which I'll tell you makes us especially proud to know that these fine students, now fine young men and women, are going to be soon defending our country, representing the red, white, and blue, and all the many freedoms that we come to enjoy here in our great country. So we certainly thank them in advance, and it's been our pleasure to teach them over these past 13 years. In addition, over 92% of our students will soon be transitioning to post-secondary education. And as a testament to all things Council Rock, our community should know that $22 million of scholarship money this year was awarded to Council Rock seniors from this year's senior class, $22 million, which is absolutely outstanding. The remaining 6% of our graduates are either entering the workforce, and I do know that some of them are still finalizing their plans, but each and every single one of them, regardless of their plans, are off to great things. And again, it has been our distinct pleasure to educate them, to work with them, and we congratulate them, congratulate their parents. And it was a blast last Friday to celebrate them, celebrate their accomplishments, and we certainly wish them nothing but the best. And to any of our returning students who are watching from home here this evening, you have about 10 and a half weeks until we welcome you back. So enjoy, and we'll see you soon enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Frazier. We'll move to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes, and we've got a long list tonight, so I would ask that you hold to that 3 minutes or less. Please consider the fact that there may be young children in the audience or watching this broadcast live on CRTV when speaking. It's our goal to maintain a respectful environment so that members of our community have an equal opportunity to address the board without interruption. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your comments or questions. Lou Spearing?
Len Spearing, how soon we forget our t-shirts.
Oh, Len, I apologize. Looks like a W there.
Quite all right. I guess we'll start. Are you going to start? Oh, there you go. So I taught at Howell Middle School for 35 years. While there, I coached football, wrestling, track, volleyball, baseball. I also coached for from 2002 to 2016 men's track at Council Rock South. So I came to speak in favor of having tracks at the middle school level. Failing to plan for a track to me would be akin to not providing a gymnasium. Provides more opportunities for students to participate in a meaningful way in sports. Combining Richboro and Holland Middle School, you're going to reduce the number of opportunities for students to be on a team, to compete. Track is one of the few sports that does not cut. I also coach football, and we didn't cut there, but track gives more kids a meaningful way to compete and participate. I mean, we're talking about, unlimited participation. Currently, the track teams at each of the middle schools, and I know each of the coaches because all of them went through Holland Middle School. Right now, the students are practicing on the parking lot. When I was coaching there, we had to dodge buses and cars or, restrict traffic flow so students could sprint on the paved surface, or otherwise they run in the grass, and often that's rutted or not mown. We mow the fields where they compete, but very often they're running in fields, and it's just an accident waiting to happen and not necessary. And that's true for not only track, but for the gym classes. As at Council Rock South, when we finish practice at 5:30, we have literally hundreds of kids each night waiting to get on the track. So there's ample opportunity, for all students. I'm sure that if we have a track at the middle school, the community would make abundant use of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. David Marrington?
Okay, yeah, my name's Dave Marrington. I'm going to echo a lot of what Len
Dave, I'm
just
sorry, what
said.
town are you from?
I'm from Langhorne, but I taught at Council Rock for 35 years.
Excellent.
And I've been coaching track at Council Rock High School since 1975, which, I don't know, 40-something years. I've been coaching track for a lot of time. I also coach swimming at Council Rock. I coach cross country, and it's a great place to be. Obviously, I'm in favor of putting tracks at both middle schools. And I can speak as a coach that we're at a severe disadvantage competitively when we compete against particularly schools in Central Bucks, Neshaminy, Maple Point, schools that have tracks in their middle schools. And we do okay. We've held our own. But I think we lose a lot of kids, and I can just give you an example. At Newtown, which I'm most familiar with, there were well over 120 boys and girls running middle school track. By the time they get to us, I think we had 17 that actually came out in 9th grade. And what they say is, well, we didn't have a real good experience at Newtown. And the problem was they didn't have a track to compete on. They didn't have any hurdles to use, no high jump pits, no long jump runways. And so they did not have, they felt kind of like a second class citizens running track and field at Council Rock. That shouldn't be. To be honest, I don't see any reason for that to continue. I don't look at us as a second class sport. I look at us as a very successful program that, you mentioned how many kids are going on in college. I know just at our program, we had 12 kids that are continuing to run at a high level at Division I and Division II schools. So we appreciate the support, and part of that would be putting some tracks into the middle schools. And I think Len mentioned the fact that so many community people use these. I go to North, we practice before school. Every morning, it's still dark out, there'll be 15, 20 people running laps on the track at North. These are community people. CYO uses the track, so that's, and they pay to use it. But that also means that the high school kids get a little shortchanged. And if we had extra tracks in the community, I think that pressure would also be alleviated. So anyway, that's the gist of what I have to say. Hopefully, we can get this program started. Obviously, I think the time to do it is during this construction. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you. Heather Brossman?
Everybody. Do I have to start my own clock? So I am so impressed that my teacher from North is here. Thank you. I was Heather Lever at the time. And Len has come out to help out in my running club at our elementary school. So I'm representing many families who asked me to come here tonight to represent the hope that you will put a track at our middle schools. I volunteer at Richboro Elementary School, and over the past 5 years, I have run a running program with I Run for Life, which is a nonprofit elementary school program run by parent volunteers and teachers who volunteer their time. We have close to 100 kids who come out to this running club, up to 40 adults we've had at one time in our running club to help these kids participate. We've had many runners move on from our elementary level track or running club to the track team at the middle school. A track at our middle school would mean so much to the community as our children, our elementary kids run around sidewalk and over curbs and through mulch to run. And when they get to the middle school, for them to feel like they've moved up to a track team with a track would be a huge, huge thing for the whole community. Our middle schoolers at Richboro Middle run on sidewalks that end abruptly, don't connect to each other, and they have to cross a street that has some pretty fast cars moving down them. The closure of Richboro Middle School will mean that many children who could participate in sports that have cuts will not be able to participate in as many sports as we have available with 2 middle schools on the south side of the Council Rock. The addition of a track would allow all children to access a cardiovascular sport. With many of the health issues that we have in the community, I think that can't be more valued than that. And they aren't able to be on any other teams. They would still be able to participate in track as they don't have cuts, as the coaches mentioned. So a track would be amazing. It would give kids access to a sport with a safe place to run without car exhaust, speeding cars, hard surfaces, which can be damaging on the growing bones of young people. And the community could also utilize this track for youngsters during the summer months, as many families in our running club have asked if there's a continuation of running club for their children after our program is over. We know how hard it is to put things into schools after the fact, and I'm really hoping we can plan ahead and put a track in our middle schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Kathleen Stewart?
Hi, my name is Kathleen Stewart. I'm from Holland. And I would like to show my support for the construction of tracks at both Holland and Newtown Middle School. Running is a huge part of my life, and middle school track is where my passion for track really took off. It was a time for me to interact with my peers, get physical activity, and experience success. I think I actually still hold the middle school district record for the mile, and I went on to flourish running at Council Rock South and at a Division I college. So I really wish I had a track to practice on in middle school instead of just running in circles around a grass field. Having a track is vital to the track program at the middle school. You wouldn't have a soccer team without soccer fields. You wouldn't give a student an exam without teaching them the material. Therefore, you can't expect the athletes to perform at their potential without giving them the proper means to do so. And this involves having a track to practice on and ultimately compete on. For good reason, Council Rock School District is looked at very highly by other people and other schools for its achievement in and out of the classroom. And part of being the model for a high caliber and well-rounded education involves making sure the school improves in all aspects as time goes on. And this includes maintaining and creating the proper athletic facilities needed for the students. Furthermore, the tracks can and will be used by everyone in the school, even for gym class, for running and walking. And in addition, other school sports will benefit from utilizing a track for their conditioning. Even members of the surrounding community will take advantage of the tracks for their own exercise. So it will not go to waste, that's for sure. Lastly, I want other children to fall in love with track and field and running just like I did. I want kids to have the privilege of joining a sport that emphasizes working hard, setting goals, pushing oneself, and creating healthy lifelong habits. So having a track will draw more kids into the sport as well as improve the experience for the many kids who are already involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Campbell, please.
All right, good evening. Kevin Campbell, 18 Dispatch Drive, Upper Makefield. When I was on the planning committee, these projects specifically incorporated world-class designs. We spent many meetings looking at architectural renderings, engineer drawings. We even have a virtual tour on the website. They included fields and tracks. I remember standing here many times concerned about cost, and I stand before you again tonight with that same concern. But that concern is something that we all, as parents, educators, and people of the board, must consider with everything we do. During the course of the budgeting process, items were taken out for being fiscally responsible, and I applaud all of the hard work and pains that go into such a daunting task. What do I cut? What implications is that going to serve my community? And what are the long-term effects? Questions and decisions you had to make in order to get the budget in line, and I applaud you all for the hard work you have done. But we are now sitting in a different place. We have budgeted. We have actuals that have come in under budget. We have a surplus, so to speak, that we could potentially use, and we have a strong fund balance. There are many things that come to mind as what to do with the savings. Some will say do nothing. Our financial people may enjoy hearing that. Some will say put things back into the budgets that were called for, originally taken out, that were designed for the students, with the students in mind, which is one of our mission statements. Some say we should level set the high schools to bring South up to North. An interesting discussion that took place at the facilities meeting the other night. To me, this is not an option. These original budgets did not reflect scope of work that was not intended for the two schools that the budgets were designed for. In light of this, and talking to other members of the community, I would be open to using some of the funds available, but only after the projects have achieved their objective and the schools were built with the tracks. There are contingencies in these budgets that are significant. If a portion of those contingencies were left over, you could build your tracks at both Holland and in Newtown, and you could update or bring up to par South. It is my belief that the best interest is for the children to have these tracks. Our welcome statement on our website states, quote, "You will find we are a community passionate about our children and that we enjoy working together to always serve their best needs. That being stated, I am in support of these tracks as they were designed with the intent in mind, and that to have the opportunity to put those back into the budget at their respectful locations." In closing, if having tracks keeps children off streets, safer, fit, and potentially serves the community well, what a great story our community, this board, and this area could tell. The past is the past, but it's been haunting us by not doing something we originally intended to do, and we should not follow suit. Let's exceed what we've decided to do. Let's correct the past. We are Council Rock, success for every student, every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Nancy Sowers?
Nancy Sowers from Holland. I am here representing Citizens for Education, but also as the parent of a recently graduated track athlete. And I appreciate the board placing the issue of running tracks for the middle schools on tonight's agenda, as well as at last week's facilities meeting. A few points for your consideration. Track is the highest participation sport at the middle school level, with 16% of kids participating, and the only sport to not have appropriate facilities in the Holland Middle and Newtown Middle renovation and construction plans. Let's fix that. Injuries at the middle school ages are particularly concerning as they can affect growth plates and result in lifelong issues. Proper track facilities, as opposed to running and jumping on grass with holes and divots, reduce the risk of serious injury. Track is a no-cut sport with an event for kids with every body type: sprinting, mid and distance running, throwing, and jumping. In track, it is not just about winning, but is all about incremental improvement and achieving a new personal record. Track is also a lifelong sport that helps kids stay healthy and builds character traits like discipline, focus, teamwork, and confidence. Let's encourage this sport by having the right facilities. track and running coaches, as well as health and phys ed teachers, are the experts when it comes to the impact running tracks could have on CRSD students, as well as the risks of not having proper facilities. Will the school board or administration invite these individuals to get involved in this discussion? Middle school track athletes miss classes to travel to 10 away meets in a single marking period, which is a significant amount of lost class time, as well as a busing expenditure. Also, the Holland Middle track meet schedule shows many neighboring school districts have running tracks at their middle schools. Why not Council Rock? Now is the best time to add running tracks to the plan. As we've seen from the lack of South Pool and Stadium, it must be done during or near the construction and renovation of the school. There's no need to hold track facilities hostage until a pool or stadium are built at South. We can be impacting the health of younger kids right now. Further, building a stadium at South could actually reduce the availability of practicing there for the South track teams, since other sports will want to use the facility. Don't hold track facilities hostage to whether English books are purchased. Track facilities should not be a part of the recurring budget, but should be paid from the fund balance as a sustainable improvement for students, or use the amount available in the renovation and construction budget. The community can use the middle school tracks during off hours for individual exercising as well as for nonprofit and for-profit events. Over 235 individuals have already signed a petition in support of middle school running tracks. I hope each of you will take these points into consideration as you make decisions about the facilities for future track athletes at our district middle schools. When the time to vote comes, think about what it would mean if the baseball team had to practice in the parking lot, or the basketball team had to practice in the cafeteria with trash cans instead of hoops. I encourage you to find the space at Holland and Newtown middle schools, appropriate the funding, and make a lasting impact on the health and well-being of the hundreds of Council Rock students who participate in track now and in the thousands that will in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Carol Burke.
I'm Carol Burke from Holland, and actually I have to be careful what I sign because I didn't know I signed to speak, but I do agree with the tracks. I'm here to support Nancy and all the other folks here in favor of the tracks. I have 3 children, one who will be a seventh grader at Holland Middle, and a son who will be a senior at South, and a son who will be a junior in college, and they've all participated in track. My son in college now gives running tours of his college and has met folks from all over the world. He's joined the triathlon team. My son at Council Rock South has participated in track and cross country, and my daughter has participated through St. Bede's as well as my son. So that's where they started off. And so I strongly encourage you to build those tracks. And it's also the intangibles as well. My sons and daughters have made, I believe, lifelong friends through track and field, and the healthy aspect of it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Nancy Carroll.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I too am looking forward to the discussion about tracks at the middle school. I do not take my advocacy lightly. When I advocate for something, I have to know all the data and all the facts before I make up my mind. And that's why I wanted the latest drawings before I could make up my mind whether I would jump into this advocacy. But once I'm in, then it touches my, in this case, I learned so much about track that I did not know. So many things about Council Rock and track and other school districts that I did not know. After I got the drawings and went to the facilities meeting, I think I drove up and down Green Lane maybe about 15 or 20 times. I was afraid somebody was going to report me as a stalker of the construction workers that were there. I also went up to Newtown Township and I asked them who owned Green Lane, and they said it's a private road. I said, does that mean that Council Rock owns it? And they said yes. I said, does that mean that Council Rock is responsible for its maintenance and its snow plowing? And they said yes. And I said, theoretically, if Council Rock wanted to move it a little bit, What, would they need permits from the township? They said no. I said from PennDOT, they said only if the entrance was changed. They consider it a driveway. And as long as it didn't affect the pervious surface. And I said, are you sure? And then they brought somebody out from the back who answered the questions in the same way. And that's what made me drive up and down Green Lane, because I believe that a track could be feasible at Newtown if Green Lane was just a tad over, whatever the overhang is on the other side, if you would move it over. I don't say that it's not without its challenges because there's a slope there. But we used to, Mr. Desko, no, we used to park hundreds of cars up on that at back to school nights. And the trail that belongs to the township, which is probably in East Mist, is far away from, it goes up and it's pretty far away from Green Lane. So I'm here to advocate for tracks for both schools. I'm here to advocate not postponing it because that many hundreds of students will not get the use of it if you postpone it, and there may be another board. And I'm also against the tactics of build a track, a stadium or a pool before we do the tracks, because that does not solve the problem for these children. And I consider it a parity issue, a safety issue, and an opportunity for students to be in the same sport, no matter what their athletic ability, no matter what their academics ability. They could be in all special ed classes or all AP classes, and they can still be together on the track team. It's a great leveler. And we're going to 2 schools. There's going to be more competitions for baseball, basketball, and all the other sports. And a lot more kids are going to be cut at that level than there ever was. And they have an opportunity to be on track if they get cut from their first choice sport. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Okay, thank you. I'm going to pull one agenda item forward, if you're okay with that, Dr. Frazier. Ms. Brooks, if you could please read item number 1 for approval. One past the
Under Roman 4, under Roman 5.
Personnel actions.
I move to approve the personnel actions as contained in the attachments to this agenda.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Pilot. Any questions for Mr. Fioli? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grubb?
Yes.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Violet?
Yes. That motion passes 9-0. And Dr. Frazier, I believe you have some comment.
I do. Part of this evening's personnel actions, and this is the result of a couple retirements at the high school level, Mr. L. Gamble at Council Rock North and Mr. Charlie Cassidy at Council Rock South, both assistant principals retired this year after wonderful, wonderful careers with us. And their replacements have been officially hired now. So we welcome here this evening Mr. Scott Layer, who's unable to be with us this evening, but Mr. Layer comes to us from Cheltenham High School, the Cheltenham School District, so we certainly welcome him. Mr. Layer will be the assistant principal and athletic director at Council Rock South. So we'll look forward to seeing him soon here in the school district. And here with us this evening, we have Mr. Robert Finley. And I would like to welcome Mr. Finley up here to the podium. Mr. Finley is going to be our new assistant principal and athletic director at Council Rock High School North. So, Mr. Finley, welcome.
Welcome.
And you look better than I've ever seen you with that little friend.
This is my daughter, Emily. You've already heard my son, Robert. My wife, Martina's back there. Just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm honored and humbled, and I'm really excited to get started. Okay, say thank you.
Good luck, Robert.
Fantastic. And congratulations to you. Thank you so much for coming here this evening. And I think I might see pretty much the entire North administration here in support tonight as well. That's very nice of you folks. Outstanding. Good work. Robert, congratulations. Welcome to Council Rock.
And to Mrs.
Absolutely.
Finley, thank you for lending us your husband. We'll try and return him occasionally.
All right, so we'll move back up to our discussion item. Obviously, we've heard from a lot of folks tonight. We've gotten input from the community. We had extensive conversation in the facilities meeting last week. So the facilities committee has brought the consideration of the middle school running tracks as a discussion item. Like I said, I know that discussion was extensive, having watched the videotape. So what I would like to do now is just understand, what the will of the board is relative to continuing this discussion.
I've been reflecting on this topic for the last couple of weeks pretty intently, because I think one of the issues is, not in any purposeful way, not in any deceptive way, but just in a retrospective look. We did not do a good job in the discussions and the planning of the middle school projects to address this topic. There were cursory comments at meetings. There were some documents, limited documents shared with the board, but there was never any public conversation about tracks until last week. And I think if there had been a little bit more attention to the tracks earlier in the discussions, we wouldn't be here right now. If conversations about the track had actually had the light of day earlier in our process, and if we would have heard the comments from the community and gotten the emails that we've gotten, I don't believe that there would have been hesitation to say, wait a minute, absolutely, we need to have these tracks. I mean, comments like were said tonight, or in emails like, would we put the basketball team in the cafeteria shooting hoops into trash cans? Of course not. And so you have an opportunity to plan these buildings. I'm not the parent of students who were terribly involved in athletics. I never fully understood the number of students who participate, the approach to it, how everyone is welcomed, all abilities, the understanding of the motivation that it gives, that you're trying to improve your personal best. I know, because of the things that my children were involved with, that success in school happens in a classroom, but is supported by how they feel in the school and what their associations are. For my children, that was largely through marching band. That was their team. And to provide opportunities for students to really engage in their sport is going to reap benefits in other parts of their life, their health, their academics, their social and emotional well-being. I believe that we can add these in now, and I think we can do it without burdening our taxpayers. So I would like to see us move forward. We can talk about the issues that exist at Newtown Middle. I recognize that that is a little bit more challenging. I don't believe necessarily insurmountable, but we can have discussion. But for me, certainly at Holland Middle School, I think that it would be a tremendous service to our community and to these projects to see what we can do to move these projects forward and include the tracks.
Thanks, Ms. Brooks. Is there anyone else like to make comment?
I'm looking at Dr. Foster, but I guess I'll go. I again want to say I appreciate having this on the agenda. We had quite a conversation at our last meeting about whether this be a valid topic to have on the agenda, and I'm glad we finally agreed to have it on there. So I haven't supported either one of these middle school projects as they sit today. And honestly, this is part of the reason. My feeling is that if we would have had that discussion about what we want to include in the middle school, are we including track? Are we including everything, all the items that we want inclusive of the school campus? Maybe we wouldn't have built out on the site that we're building on for Newtown Middle School. Perhaps we would have built on the Howell track where it's we have more acreage out there and we can do more, because I believe that we're landlocked potentially with Newtown Middle School, and probably even if we want to put a track in there, it probably won't work, in my opinion. I think that this is a good thing to do. I think that I would be in support of it for Holland, the way it sits today. I think it's a good investment for our children. Wendy had said, I think paraphrasing, I don't want to pay for this if I can't buy sixth grade English books, right? Something like that. And I respect that, but as Denise said, academics, not everything is in the classroom. There's a lot to be gained from what you learn out on the fields. And I didn't realize either that we have hundreds of kids that are involved in this at the middle school level, and I think it's a good thing, and I kind of think it's a no-brainer. It's really, really unfortunate that I just don't think we can fit it into Newtown Middle unless we do a shorter version or something like that, but I think it's money well spent, Frank.
So I
Ms.
guess
Thomas?
it's my turn to clarify my position. So just to be clear, in my view of this, we don't have extra money sitting around. We went out for a bond issue. We pay many dollars for every one of those dollars we spend. And if we don't spend them, we can put them back to pay down the dollars of the debt service. And we don't have to pay $17,500,000 out of our operating budget every year. So just to be clear, these cost $1 million, but in bond payments, many, many more. That's the money issue I have. I have absolutely zero issue with track. Take the money allotted for athletics, let the middle schools figure out what they want to spend them on. If more kids run in track, build the tracks. My kids have benefited from from sports, and many, many of our students have done great in track, but none of our elementary school students will have STEM. Not will they have it good, can they do it outside, not can they do it on a sidewalk. They won't get STEM. I just heard of another district in the 5-county area that expanded their STEM education. We'll have zero. If I reduce the $17,500,000 I pay in debt service by $200,000 a year, I can get 2 STEM specialists for the elementary. Not an offered program, not halfway done. It's not done. I use the 6th grade reading books that you referred to as another example. My problem comes with spending more money when I have cut and cut and cut and cut into the classroom. So I have a zero issue building a track. If that's what the middle school athletic people say should be done with the money, have at it. But for me, I don't think we are, because we came in under budget, I don't feel like we have extra money. I'm going to pay multiple dollars for every one of those dollars I spend. And if I do have money that I can pay, I want to pay down the debt so that I can pay less in debt service. Now, it's been made, comments have been made to me specifically because I wasn't really going to speak tonight because I'm saying the same thing, and I apologize for those of you who've been listening to me the whole time over and over again. But that I wish we had people coming out to support STEM, and when some of the conversations I've gotten into, people don't even realize what we've cut next year. They haven't seen it, they haven't felt it. When I started talking to them about some of the cuts that were made, they had no idea. Not because I'm not saying that we didn't communicate it just yet, but people can't pay attention to every single thing the school district does. And so next year, when they're in the middle of it and they see the reduced staff and they see the reduction and they see the stuff, you have to start making hard, for me, very hard decisions. This is a great thing. There is on no level is this a bad thing to spend money on zero level. It's just, I am going to choose to spend money. I voted to raise taxes. So for me, this is spending taxpayer money. Just, this is me. I've asked the taxpayers for more money so I could run the schools. After I cut everything I cut, I can't do it. I can't put it back in. It's not against track. It's against spending money that, to me, I don't have.
Ms. Thomas. Dr. Foster?
Great, thanks. This has been a great conversation that we should have had years ago, and I'll just say some of the things that Mr. Bialik and Mrs. Brooks have already said. I had no idea also the number of students that were involved. I also hadn't really appreciated the equality of track, that when you think about boys and girls tracks, it's the same thing. And so the kind of complicated audits we go through with Title IX and the balancing of things like football, which is inherently a male-only thing, with other things like cheerleading or what have you, and having to balance the money. And so you'll get these things in Title IX where objects like a pole vault, which are really expensive, help us make our books balance with respect to men and women equality. Well, track balances it in such a straightforward way. It's the same activities for the boys as the girls. Hadn't known about the injuries that occur on the grass fields, so that was fascinating to learn. Hadn't known that the track at North, that the use of that, it conflicts with renting it for soccer, and so that North's own track team sometimes can't use it because of conflicts with soccer or conflicts with lacrosse. So, the idea of having more capacity in the system for track, where we can travel a short distance by bus, and it could be any of our schools, whether it's Newtown going to Holland or North going to Holland. I do understand that Newtown is more difficult as a site. It's still worth picking away at it, but it's not the easy, low-hanging fruit of Holland where we could put in a track, plenty of room, have it ready for when the school opens and start using it right away. I had not known of the incredible activities in track by St. Andrews and St. Bede's. And the parents that send their kids to those schools pay school taxes as well, but they just get busing. So giving them something as members of the community that they can use, I think, is a tremendous thing. And it was a really unfortunate collision of events that we learned through an email that 25 coaches involved in those track programs and 150 families are right now at a banquet and would otherwise be able to attend tonight to advocate for track. But they can't because they have a track event. And I'm also thinking, before I get to the money, about the landscape of our knowledge. And some emails we got kind of touched on that. How much our knowledge has changed since Newtown was built, whatever, 1955, 56, since Holland Middle School was first built back in the early 70s. How much we know more about the benefits of exercise on academic performance, on depression, on cardiovascular, on cancer incidence. It's an incredible amount of knowledge, of course, on diabetes, that we didn't have back then, on concussion risk in other sports. The landscape is just different than it was. And so the value of tracks, if you were to think of it as an asset that you buy or sell on the market, the values of tracks have gone up, way up, given the knowledge that we have about the importance of lifelong sports. Now on the money, so we have made cuts in ongoing operations because of our budget shortfall. So I want to play a little Q&A with our finance expert, Mr. Reinhardt. And these are kind of questions where I know the answer, and we all do, but I'll ask them anyway. So
Wish you would have given them before that.
Well, they're pretty softballs. So can we borrow money from the bond market to pay for a STEM specialist? Is that something we can do?
Operational costs, you cannot.
We can't do it. Can we borrow money from the bond market for a track?
Yes.
We can. Okay, so when we went out for money for the middle school projects, we have this thing from January 7th, 2016. we had the Series A bonds of $60 million and a Series 2016 for $16.6 million. So that was pretty much for the middle school projects.
The 60 million was for the middle school project, 26 million was a refinancing.
Right. So that's about 60 million for the middle school?
60 million, we already had around 20 million to 22 million, which I don't know for sure yet until Goodnow is totally complete. I feel like
And
it's-
we need to go out for more money for the middle school projects. We still don't have enough.
Correct.
We have to go to the bond markets for more.
Yes,
Okay, and you said it was about 23 million?
correct.
Okay. And when I look at this January 17th thing where we went to the bond market, there's this notation of a true interest cost,
Yep.
which when we did the bidding was about 2.9%. And so I assume that's net of fees and all that. True interest
That
cost.
grosses out all the cost of the issuance to a number, yes.
So the bond council, all that stuff. And so we're going to go out for $22 million more. We have $23 million more. We have to. So, and we're going to have all those issuance costs, all that overhead. So if we tacked on another $1.3 million for that for that Holland Middle track, which is something that the civil engineer says we could totally fit on that. We've already paid the overhead. It's not really going to cost that much additional for the bond council for PFM and all that to add on another 1.3 million, right?
Yeah, can I tell you, I think I know where you're going here, and I want to make sure that this doesn't become the issue. We are well structured to be able to afford these tracks. Rather than saying that can we borrow this or cannot borrow it, and is it going to be a large cost or anything, I would say no. I want to make sure you know it's always competing for other things that we need to do.
In the
And that-
capital project space is where the competition
Yes.
occurs.
Yes.
Not in the classroom space.
Which ultimately affects the general fund budget, a lot tying in the way Wendy has talked about what we're going to do with our debt service. But this will not affect any taxpayer, this choice. This choice may affect, can we maintain buildings in the future, renovations that we may need to do, Doug's projects and maintaining buildings. So that's the competing thing that I see, but that is a board decision, I believe.
Right, so that book of work that Doug has, and it may be cracked pavements, it may be roofs that we want to replace, in 2 years that we could push to 3 years, and all that kind of juggling is where this track would reside, in that kind of decision-making about capital expenditures, right? That's where the trade-offs really are, Fred.
Yes.
Now, when I think about, and this is just an estimate, if you think about a $1.3 million project, and if we have an interest rate of 3%, and my memory is that a lot of our bonds are pretty short-term,
We do wraparound bonds, yes.
So I just went with, let's assume that we borrow $1.3 million at 3% and pay it off in 10 years. I calculated that the payments we would make over that 10-year period were $152,000 a year to knock that out for 10 years. And then when I think about some comparable costs in the district, so the net cost, about half of our teachers are at the top of scale. And when you add on their FICA, their health care, their pension, and their salary, the net cost of about half of our teachers, each one of them, is about $158,000 a year. So not to be like Sally Struthers, but for less than the cost of, not a cup of coffee, but less than the cost of one teacher for 10 years, we could have a track that serves hundreds and hundreds of kids and impacts their long-term health. I think it's a huge, tremendous bargain, and I'm totally supportive of it at Holland Middle School. And I'd like us to pick away at it at Newtown and see if there's anything we can figure out there. That's a longer, harder road to go down. So, thanks so much.
Mr. Grubb?
Some of the comments made from the public today. Someone spoke to that because the project came in at less money than we expected, that's a surplus, so to speak. I don't think so, because that's just less money that we have to borrow. That same speaker spoke to doing something that we're not doing something we originally intended to do. And then there was another comment made about South, having a stadium. South was never intended to have a stadium. That was explicitly a design consideration when South was built, recognizing how the football stadium is used. Agreed, it is predominantly focused at that point on football when that was built. But football, with the number of away games, number of home games, 2 schools could use the property without competing with one another. So those were some public comments. I have had a board member who's now said that we didn't do a good job. That's an opinion. It's not a statement of fact. That in that board member's opinion, we didn't do a good job. I think we actually have done a good job. The same board member talked about putting a basketball team in some other room. Maybe at the high school level, but just so we're clear, we've made these decisions in the past because they were appropriate to be made at the time. We've had schools where they didn't have a gym because of the time they were building. There wasn't the funds to build the gym, and the gym was the all-purpose room, which was also the cafeteria. I have another board member who's spoken about that there are conflicts with the soccer and lacrosse team rentals, soccer and lacrosse rentals of a field, and that prevents us from using the track for a school district activity. I'll look to the administration and ask, that's been said here. I don't know that there's any verified instance of that, but I'll ask you to look. That's a direct conflict with both the direction and intent of the board that the use of school facilities for school purposes, including our co-curricular activities, which would include track run by the school district, is always to take precedence. I'm looking at you only because you're the administrator. It was always to take precedence, and if Cruza has the field or somebody else at lacrosse has the field, and that would interfere with running track, then track is to be the priority.
Yes, that is correct.
So please, because the board member said it, you just please check. They left already, the guys who would know.
We will verify that, but that is the understanding and the agreement, so we will check on the execution of that.
I appreciate that. Mr. Reiner brought up about borrowing. Summer projects are an issue for this district. We have an investment. Actually, if you'd like to look in, for those of us on the board, the value of our property is listed in the statement of insurance today. I believe it's on page 18. Not like quoted here before.
I think 18 and 19.
18 and 19 gives the stated value of the property. That's the replacement value of all the property the district owns. So when you come to the bottom line, I apologize for the extemporaneous. Oh, look, there's a total. There's $417 million of property that we own. We spend, I'm looking at Doug to get a nod or a wave off. We try and spend, what, $3 million a year on summer projects to maintain, to ballpark close?
Well, if I could elaborate just a bit, we do allocate $3 million for summer projects. However, soft costs come out of that for professionals, for other fees, and some of those costs are not for preventative maintenance or capital renewal projects. They're taking care of the removal of modular classrooms is not preventative maintenance or capital projects. So the monies we've been allocating for these projects have not necessarily equaled the amount of money, in fact, have not been equaling the amount of money that we need to spend each year for ongoing maintenance. And that's something I'm going to present at an upcoming facilities meeting.
Thank you. So my point is, at that way, when you look at it, we're spending $3 million on $4.2 million, $420 million of property. We're not doing everything we should be doing to maintain the property. We talk about investments in this school district. Our investment is this property, and we have to maintain it and keep it up. So while I hear that, yes, you could borrow money, just so we're clear, last week, 2 weeks ago at this table, I made an impassioned plea about a special education person who was $158,000. Dr. Lambert, didn't think he'd be involved in this conversation, did he? Dr. Lambert, to his credit, took a different tack and said, had he had that same money, he'd be bringing back the aides to work with the children with disabilities, special needs kids, so $156,000. So the same point, which is if that's the interest on the track, I'd rather spend that working with kids with special needs because that's an enduring thing. It may not be hundreds, but those 5 people would impact quite a few lives for an enduring way of life. So those were the comments about the comments so far. I will tell you that I'm very appreciative, oh, there's one more. I'm very appreciative of Terry from Terraform, who came to present the facilities. It's such an active item. I would invite more people to look at it because that's right now, at the beginning of this meeting, 68 people have viewed that meeting so far. I'm aware of at least 3 board members, and I've viewed it 3 times. So that means there are 62 people in the community who viewed it. I have a boring commute, and I let it play so I can hear the detail. And when you listen to the detail, I agree. I think Newtown Middle School at this point, I don't know how to make it possibly work. And then we look at Holland. And in the presentation, it does appear that there would be a way to put a track at Holland that would work. My concern, as I spoke at that meeting, was it would be about $220,000 change right now to create the space to run the track in the future as a future ad. Both Terry from Terraform, who's very familiar with this, it's a profession, and Doug, who's been involved in many of these, spoke to it and counseled me at that time that their position is it would be smarter to complete the project as you have it, get it done, and then come back and revisit. I want to go back to we haven't done a good job. First of all, the discussion of a track had come up and been discussed and been dismissed. We didn't bring it out as a whole discussion. For hyperbole, last time I spoke about my high school had a planetarium. We didn't have one here, but we didn't discuss it because we didn't want one. Greenhouse, same thing. There was never discussion of a nuclear reactor. Let me be very clear. But let me draw an analogy to what we have done in the past. At South, there was a movement to have a small theater program. And what we did as a board, because enough people thought they knew about it and they advocated. So if the fault is here somewhere, it's that the people on this board either didn't want the track or didn't consider the track, or those who did didn't fight for it. And I'm not sure where the fault lies. Because what happened at the theater project was we built it into the project. We built the specs, and we had the specs that said, give us the cost for all of these things, electrical, plumbing, masonry, everything. And if we include the little theater, how much will those things be? And if we don't include the little theater, how much will those things be? And at the bottom line, we came to it and we could figure it out and said it was $500,000, $750,000. I don't remember the number, 17, 18 years ago. How much would it be? And at that point, with borrowing in hand, we're underway, and the impact, we knew, and we decided, Rick Abramson and I were in the minority, we decided not to build a little theater. It's an important story, and the reason the story is important is when you do a project, you are, the day after you sign the contract, you're captive to those contractors. So if you're building a renovation on your house, and in the middle of your renovation on your house, you decide that you want to add a bathroom, the guy who already bid the project gets to bill you for the bathroom at whatever he wants to bill you for, because you have to pay for it. It's part of the project. If you had bid it earlier, included it, and said, maybe I want a bathroom, maybe I don't, the price would be competitive. We're not in that space. So for me, at this point, anti-track, not anti-track. I'm anti-many things. But I have to weigh how it impacts what I do. So for me, I had put forward the idea, maybe we move the location of some things now to allow a track to be built. I was dissuaded by that, by people who are professionals in that space. And if you want to have it, it's a good idea now. I don't think it's a bad idea in 2 years. I want the schools done and on time. There are too many things going on. The lay claims are expensive. They hurt the community. They hurt the students. I'm not interested in doing that. You want to look at it later? God bless. For the people who say, you never come back and do things, you know, the swimming pool, we didn't build it in, somebody else built it in. That's interesting. The stadium, we never planned on a stadium at South. And we did go back and do things. Salt Finestone was never as big as it is now because it had additions. Holland Elementary School is as big as it is now because it's had additions. Churchville is as big as it is now because it's had additions. Goodnoe is as big as it is now because that had additions. The things that exist at South, at the larger swimming pool at North is there now because we changed it when we renovated it and we made it bigger because we saw perception. So I won't take issue, but I will disagree that we don't go back and do things again. So for me, it's not a bad idea at the right time, and this is not the right.
Is there any other comment?
I'll comment the one thing that was spoken out at the public here, and that was about plan ahead for this, these tracks. Well, and to reiterate what Jerry said, planning ahead for these tracks was 2 years ago. I mean, they weren't bid. Right now, we're not bid for them. Doug, I believe, if I'm correct, it's going to take 8 months to get the permits for them, ish. And then if timing, so we wouldn't be ready to start them until the middle schools were just about finished. I mean, realistically, we wouldn't, or we'd be holding everything up and correct.
We would be 8 months-ish for approvals, plus then bidding and awarding. So you're probably a year until you can actually start the construction of a track. And then there's going to be, you know, several months of constructing the track and then the field construction within the track that would be one of the fields that's needed for the school. So for certain, wherever the staging area is and the track, the multi-purpose field within the track, probably 2 field areas would not be available for the start of school because they generally need at least a year to become established before you want to start.
That was my next question. How long does it take you to grow grass you can?
Right, so we're right now with the middle school projects, especially at Newtown with all new fields, our efforts are to allow at least a growing season before we start using those fields so that they can become an established, strong root structure for the longevity of those fields.
Okay. So, I mean, that along with the fact that I've made it very clear, I think we need to clean up some of the messes at South that are left. Gary may not call them messes. They were planned that way, but and so track
home deficiencies,
deficient, whatever. We're only talking about one track after hearing Terry. I mean, the topology is something that's inviolate. It's just, we'd have to spend a lot of money to make enough flat surface at Newtown. We want to talk about Holland Middle School track. Let's talk about our athletic facilities as a whole. And what does the Council Rock community as a whole want with our 2 new athletic directors and get their feet under it. And so right now, trying to slam this in, it's not for me. You want to do it later, borrowing the money later versus borrowing the money now. It's pennies. But let's have a bigger discussion. Let's not slam dunk it now. That's where I stand.
Okay.
Real quickly, I think track is a tremendous sport. One of my kids took a lot of pleasure out of participating in track at North for a couple of years as one of those walk-ons who wasn't really a competitor, just did it because it was a good way to stay fit and an enjoyable thing to do. And that's one of the wonderful things about track. We do have some serious issues with scheduling athletic facilities at North. I'm familiar with North. I'm sure those kinds of challenges exist at South and elsewhere. I think we need to look at our athletic facilities comprehensively with our 2 new athletic directors. And I think to spend, $1.5 million or more on a running track at a middle school at this point without having done a comprehensive assessment, essentially a master plan for our athletic facilities, would be a big mistake. I think that's something that's critical because there are some substandard athletic facilities in our district, and there's some real scheduling problems. So I think unfortunately this train's left the station. I don't think at this point the tracks are feasible at either middle school and would unnecessarily complicate both of these projects and put them behind schedule. I think it's unfortunate. Perhaps retrospectively, if we would have heard from the community 2 years ago about the necessity for these running tracks at the middle schools, we'd feel different. But the projects are in place, they've been bid, they've been awarded, and they're on schedule. And I think it's unfortunate, but tracks are not going to be part of these projects at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Anything else? Ms. McKesson?
I believe that, to Mr. Tate's point, the ship has probably sailed at Newtown Middle. I would say, though, and I understand that people feel that it was not necessarily discussed publicly, but my recollection, and we all have different recollections around a lot of this, but there was members of the public that came to us with regard to there not being a track at the middle school, which is, I believe, when the conversation first started. Now, the conversation probably didn't then come in here, so I get that. But there was pricing offered, at least in my head, as a result of a member of Newtown Township approaching the board saying, hey, it seems like a crime that there are no tracks here. My daughter runs track. She has benefited from the program. She has run with St. Andrews. She ran at the middle school. And I am concerned that as the press is reporting this, we're not taking away track. The program exists, the program will continue to exist, the kids that participate will continue to participate. I'm afraid that if you take something out of context, it sounds as if somebody has a third grader in an elementary school, they might believe that we do not offer track at the middle schools. We don't have tracks at the middle schools, but the program will continue to run and exist. I don't have a problem looking, in fact, I would welcome the opportunity to look at a track at Holland. Not right now, and 6 months from now is fine. When we find out if these projects remain in and under budget, but I would also like more information and some data at some point about documented injuries. I know that what the kids are running on is not ideal, but about the way that we schedule, to Mr. Tate's point, the way that we schedule across the district. Are we lending and is the community, the outside curricular programs, are they using the tracks more than our kids? We have heard a lot of things, I've read a lot of great emails. We've heard a lot of information about all of these conflicts. I would like to quantify them before I say, yep, let's go ahead and do this. But I am not a no for a track. I am not, and I don't believe we need to determine that tonight. We don't need to determine if we're going to be able to build a track at Holland and have those conversations in 6 months so that we plan for that to happen 6 months after that, or that we start this project 6 months after that. But for me to do that without greater information, yes, the community has brought a great deal of information, and I would just like some data from the district that says, what our kids are using. People have come to the microphone in public comment and said that, these kids have never gotten to Council Rock North for a track meet. My daughter got there twice. Now, that's only twice out of 10 meets. So I understand what people are saying, and I'm not saying that that's a perfect situation. But it wasn't never, it was twice. And so I just want factual data, factual information that says, here's how we're doing it. Let's see if we're doing it well. Let's see if there's places we need to work on, and then let's revisit the conversation. There is nothing at Holland it doesn't face the same problems that Newtown faces. There is nothing at Holland that says to me that we're going to be in trouble if we look at this in 6 months.
Is there any further comment before I wrap up the discussion? I'll certainly share my thoughts since I didn't have the opportunity to participate in the facilities meeting. I am pleased that we had an extended conversation in the facilities meeting, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't heard that to listen to that. And I'm glad that we had that conversation tonight. For me, it is about choices. I would tend to see things similarly to Mr. Tate, Mr. Grubb, In principle, I'd love to have tracks at both schools. In addition, though, I'd like to see the tennis courts in Newtown, which we decided not to do because we wanted to focus on parity. I'd like to see parity at the high schools. I'd like to see the 5 p.m. buses back. I mean, in a perfect world, full-day kindergarten would be something that we would want. But unfortunately, at this point in time, it's just not reasonable to undertake some of those activities given the other priorities I have, like education, technology, and as discussed here, most importantly, that piece around pressing capital improvements that we need. I mean, every year we do find $3 million for summer projects, and although it's one-time money for capital improvements, we've almost turned it into a regular operating expense of favorability in our budget every year. So for me, I hope we can do these things over time, but for me, it's not today. So that's where I stand today, and I do agree that an overall look at our athletic program in totality will help us to answer some of those questions and be best positioned as part of our bigger capital plan to make investments and prioritize and make the right choices. So at this point, I do not hear the majority of the board advocating for us to move forward with this today. Doesn't necessarily mean that we can't come back to it at some point in the future. Okay. So with that, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Mr. Bialik, if you could please take that one.
I move to approve the consent agenda, item A through J as contained in the attachments to this agenda, subject to all.
Second.
Said Mr. Dr. Thorwald. Yeah. Thank you. Is there any comment? I know Mr. Bialik, you're going to.
Yeah, I'll be voting for the motion with the exception of item H, approval of treasurer's report.
There's one item I'd like to get a little insight on. Last time we did this, Chuck, I guess, we spoke about the Sweet Stevens legal consultation, which was a $10,000. You'll need a $10,000 retainer. And that was the first time we did it last year. And I wanted to get a little bit of feedback. I assume that because it's here, it was useful. We used it. So a little bit, we had a lot of discussion about this last year. Was it the second year?
I think so. Was it last year, the second year?
Correct. This will be the third year you're approving now. We use it regularly. I get probably weekly updates from the firm on matters of current cases that are before the hearing officers, issues that our other school districts are facing. I also can contact them if I'm not student specific about issues that I have questions about in general, and I use that regularly. And we've also had representatives from the firm come in and done some meetings with different members of our staff on different issues that they're facing.
Well.
Yes.
All right, that's good. The other thing on here that I'm not going to, so the item F, which is the approval of the junior prom, I always struggle with this. I'm going to excuse myself from that one and vote no on that one item. The other item, which I just want to point out to people here, which is we have now been doing this for 15 years, and it's an important component of our high school and middle schools. On this item is a request by InterQuest Service Agreement. It's the InterQuest Service Agreement. InterQuest is the organization that we have. There's a private organization that brings in dogs who are trained to detect various things. Those dogs detect not only drugs and drug compounds. Those dogs also detect gunpowder and explosives. And those dogs are brought in on a regular schedule, go through the high schools, I think they go through the middle school, they go through our Sloan school, they go through the alternative schools. It's an important component of our school district for deterrence. Without having these announced, they go through, it's very inobtrusive, it doesn't get into the lockers unless the dog gives an indication, in which case the administration works with InterQuest to identify the locker and also with the parents when it involves a vehicle, I think, regarding the search of a vehicle. It's not an expensive thing. It's been very valuable over the years. In speaking with the administrators of the schools, it's been an important feature, and I'm really glad that we're continuing. This will be I think we're starting our 15th year. Wow. Yeah, since 2001. So the only item I'm going no on this is going to be the junior prom. I know that.
Any other questions or comments? May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Bialik?
Yes, with the exception of item H, approval of treasurer's report.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grupp?
Yes, as noted, not for F, the approval of the junior prom.
Motion passes 9-0. With those exceptions noted, please. Number 2, Dr. Foster, please.
I move to award Chromebook and mobile carts for Chromebooks bid number 16-33 to WB Mason for the Chromebooks at $249.56 each, 360 Chromebooks at a total cost not to exceed $89,841.60, subject to audit. And Valiant National AV Supply for the Chromebook carts at $582 each for 12 carts at a total cost not to exceed $6,984, subject to audit.
Second.
Any questions for Mr. Frederickson? This one. Okay.
Do we have someone designated at each of these schools? We're taking out the computer labs, correct? So do we have someone designated? These things only work if we're going to charge them and maintain them. And I know you don't have the staff for that. So do we have a staff member assigned or a volunteer?
I've spoken to each principal. What will most likely happen is the Chromebooks will either be assigned to grade level or they'll be assigned to the librarian, and the librarian will maintain them as they do. The libraries are technology hubs in most of our buildings.
Okay.
So a lot of the times the cards end up there. And
I just want to make sure we have a plan because I've seen this not work because of that. So.
Matt, at the facilities committee meeting, there was a brief discussion about the computer room at Wrightstown, and that you have a certain ratio in which when you remove a computer lab, you supply, and that ratio has you giving 3 carts, I believe, of 30 machines apiece to Wrightstown. It's not the board's directive, but I would ask you to reconsider that allocation there in terms of part of that room that's coming out is because some of those students have gone to another building, and the 5th and 6th grade of that building is somewhere else. So as you look at that, if you would just look at the total population, that would actually give that school the ratio of like 2 to 1 across all grades, which includes K to 4. It's not a directive, it's just an observation. I would like you to explore that and leave it to your best judgment.
thank you.
And just to add on to that, just in general, as we approach these things, I'd rather than seeing a formula of 3 carts replace 1 lab, to try to establish, an understanding of a scale that relates to the size of a school in general, not just probably on that one school at this one time, but just in general, because it speaks to the ratio of students to device, and I think that's where we should try to have some consistency.
I appreciate both of those comments. I was going to vote no for this, but after those 2 comments and with your agreement that we're going to certainly change the way we look at this, because there is imbalance there with Wrightstown. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I'll go ahead. Not that it would have made a difference, but I'll go ahead and vote.
So hearing no objections, I would ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Number 3, Mr. Tate, please.
I move to award the request for proposals for multifunction printer copier network devices number 16-36 to Fraser AIS for copier-related services for the next 4 years at a monthly charge of $28,109.65 at a copy print volume of number 39 million.
39,128,590,128.
Jerry, it'll be easier if you just let me read it. Okay. 39 million black and white, 342,000 color per annum, with an average cost of 0.00398 per black and white, 0.045 per color, to be reconciled once per year, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Jerry. You can take all of them if you want, Chair.
Oh, goodness.
Is there any questions for Mr. Reinhardt? Hearing no objections, I'd ask the Secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Let's go to number 4, please, Dr. Thorward.
Sure.
Mr. Thor, would you read this subject to audit and solicitor's review?
And solicitor's
Yes,
review.
please, thank you.
I move to approve the Blackboard School Wires Agreement extension for a period of 1 year at a total cost not to exceed $11,900, subject to audit and solicitor's review. Hang on, there's another half of this, isn't there?
Yeah, anybody opposed to taking both together? Thank you.
I further move to approve the school messenger agreement at a total cost not to exceed $16,731, subject to audit and solicitor's review.
Second. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Frederickson? Hearing no objections, I'd ask the Secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Mrs. Thomas, number 5, please.
I move to award the medical athletic medical supplies bid number 1605 to 10 vendors listed in the total low acceptable bid column at a total cost not to exceed $38,532.65, subject to audit.
Second. Any questions for Mr. Reinhardt? Hearing no objections, I would ask the Secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. I'll come back to Ms. Brooks for number 6. Please.
I move to approve the 2016-2017 insurance renewal items A through K to the listed vendors at the amounts noted according to the policies contained in the attachments to this agenda, subject to audit.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, you want to give us a 2-second highlights, please?
Annually, we have our broker of record who is based in know go out and market our business and insurances, and this is the combined list of them. In total is $1,171,120. Many of these coverages are straightforward, but the largest one, which is workers' compensation, I want to point out to you that that's $640,000. That is a retrospective plan. So there is a minimum and maximum that we could pay in a year. And as long as our experience continues to be great, we get refund checks back because of our good experience. And I will tell you, our costs end up in the last 3 years by going to a retrospective plan have not exceeded $400,000. So this is a larger number than I expect it will be by the end of the year. I didn't prepare a presentation for tonight, but I could show you what our experience has been. This was caused a few years ago when we were getting a deep discounted price for full insurance for workers' compensation. And 1 year, the market turned from soft to hard, and they took the discount away, and our premium was going to jump up from like $500,000 to about $900,000. At that time, Pace and No and myself looked at going fully self-insured or going to a retrospective plan. A retrospective plan is very similar to being self-insured, but we don't have to hire the third-party administrator and all that type of stuff. It is actually part of the premium, and you don't do as much, but you do get the rewards for being good experience. And I will tell you, Human Resources has done a great job in keeping people going on the workers' comp. It's a lot of work, calling people, making sure they're moving forward, going to their doctor's appointments and things like that. So it is hard work with Human Resources and really attention to detail. So it isn't without working hard, but I do believe that's good. So when I talk about the amount of the premium, that is very volatile in this. So although the premium looks like $101.2 million, it could be much less than that, the actual amount. Is that what you wanted, or?
Any questions, Mr. Grubb?
Bob, on page 29 and 30 of this document, so we'll sit before we ask you questions, you know the answers to. I think I know the answer, I want to know them. On 29 and 30, these cover the builder's risk, specifically around the Holland Middle School and the Newtown Middle School projects. My understanding is that premium that we're paying at this time is for the total life of the project. That's about $150,000 over the life of the project.
It's about $78,000 over the life. It's 28 months, I believe. So if it does get, pardon me?
I'm looking at
Yeah, I think it's 78 altogether.
No, it's 150 altogether.
I need to get back to you on that. I see what you're saying.
One is quoted as 79,448, the other's quoted as 70,000. And
You know what, you may be right then.
insurance is what it is. My query really
Yes.
is, it's for the duration. It's for the full 28 months of the project.
If there would be delays, we would have to pay additional months.
That's fine, but it's
Yes.
full. And
Yes.
Doug, we're accounting for that in the project plan. This is charged back to the project plan, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Reinhardt?
I don't have questions, but I have comment if I can. I'm going to vote for this, but it's really with objection. For the last 2.5 years that I've been on this board, is that right? 2.5 years? And before that, I've been saying that we need to RFP. We need to have a process for reviewing these vendors that we use. This is no reflection on Pace and Noe. I think they do a fantastic job. But as elected officials in our community, on this board, we have a right or a requirement to do due diligence to make sure that we're consistently getting the best people for our tax dollars and for our coverages and for all those other items. We talked about it last year. We talked about it again in the beginning of the year, and we continue to keep kicking the can down the road. And I think I can solidly say that this is the last professional contract I will be voting on until we have a serious conversation about a process for reviewing these professionals and making sure that they're the best for our district. Again, not a reflection on this particular vendor. I think they all should be looked at a minimum of 5 years. Every 3 years is the best practice.
And I appreciate that, and if the board gives me the instruction to go out and do an RFP for brokerage services, I completely support that, and I will do that. Please understand that brokerage service is very different than many of our other services, like a solicitor where we pay hour basis. A broker of record, we do not pay. The carriers pay a commission, and I completely understand that you may want to know what commissions they're receiving and all that. I don't really know that, but the commissions are part of the premium that is dealt with within the premium. If Pace and Know is not marketing our insurances or not going out and looking at our best deals or giving us alternatives, which you'll see they have given us alternatives, they have done a fine job. So if I thought there was a problem or something that we weren't getting, I would be coming to you and saying, I think we need to do something like that. I am not doing it, and I'm very fine with moving, or looking at another brokerage, and we could have interviews and everything. And I just want to make sure you know where I am with that.
Yeah, no, I think, because we have, sorry, do you want to finish? Go ahead.
I just want to comment again that, yes, that's reactive. And I think that if you see a problem with one of our vendors, one of our brokers, whatever the case may be, yes, you should come in front of the board and say, we have to address this. That's a reactive issue. What I'm talking about is we have to, on a regular basis, make sure through the due diligence process that we're reviewing our solicitor, that we're reviewing our healthcare provider, we're reviewing all the different vendors we have. And I do want to know what those commissions are. And I want to know how it drives a decision of what is coming in front of us, including the healthcare coverages. I talked about that with Gallagher, and there's an item here on the agenda here tonight, I believe. So I want that, Bob. I want you to come to us and say if there's a problem. But even if there's not a problem, we have to review it. We can't have these same people for decades, without looking at it to make sure that it's the best option for Council Rock. I'm sure it is. I'm sure we could go through and interview 15 different people, and Pace Noe has still come out as our best option. And we've done everything that we're supposed to do. I'm sure that we do the same with Mr. Cox's firm, and his firm is still the best option, but we've done everything that we're supposed to do. Right now, we're not doing everything that we're supposed to do, and we need to stop. We need to stop talking about it, and we need to do it.
Okay. I completely understand where you're coming from. I just wanted to make sure the board knew my position and make sure you know that if I thought there was something, I would definitely be being proactive in regard to that.
I think Mr. Byler's just making a point about a discussion that we've had that was kind of, I guess, appropriate to bring up given the point he was making. With finance in the summertime having just come out of a budget cycle, maybe that's something that we can think
There's
about.
a lot of things on the agenda right
Okay.
now. I'm just saying, there's a.
Let me address this, please.
Can I just finish a comment?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I've said it before. I'm the one yelling about it. I'll take the lead on it. Whenever I say, let's do this now, what can we wait until this, and can we wait until this? Let's wait until after graduation. Well, school's about to start, so it's too late now, but we've got to do it. We've got to do it now.
This topic has come up before. I addressed this issue with the full board, and I asked for us to be able to wait until school was out, wait until summertime. School has now been out for a total of 6 days. Give the cabinet room to breathe, wait until summertime got here, allow us to do the RFP master list, and then we would commit to a process to making sure that we got to each and every RFP on a triennial basis. That's where we're at. So nothing has changed since then. That's where we were at that point of conversation. That's where we're at today. So with all due respect, that's where we were. That's where we're at today.
Okay.
Excellent.
I wanted to make a comment.
Please.
So I just wanted to echo Mr. Bialik's energy for this. This is a small town, and again, like he said, not to say that there's any issues with this firm, but this is a small town. People serve multiple roles. So you have members of this firm that are pretty active in politics, and you've got members on this board that meet with them all the time. And so the only way to make sure that our integrity is completely intact and unquestioned is to go through the process that Mr. Bialik is saying we should go through. So, we need to. It's essential in a community like this where people are wearing multiple hats.
I apologize. I have to respond to something. It would be full disclosure. There was a statement just made that there are people on this board that has politics, and we meet with certain people all the time. I'll be very clear. I'm an elected Republican committeeman. I attend Republican committee meetings. At those meetings are other elected Republican officials, including Mr. Bialik, Mr. Thorward, Mrs. Thomas, and
Mrs.
one of
Brooks isn't there?
not at the Republican meeting. No. And the person who is a majority shareholder or one of the owners of record of this firm. I don't know the connotation of meeting with these people all the time. It's a meeting probably with 40 other people present, where the topics are topics of concern to the community. And I frankly resent the implication that members of this board are in conspiratorial backroom meetings with people who are selling to this district.
Thanks for the comments. I'm going to ask that we get back to this agenda item. If the board has further comment during board discussion, they can feel free to have a discussion outside the motion then. So I am not hearing any objections on this particular motion. So I'll ask the secretary to record as passing with unanimous consent. We'll move to number 7, please, Ms. McKessie.
I move to approve the 2016-2017 stop-loss insurance proposal from Sun Life at a cost of $16.99 per single contract and $37.59 for a family contract per month, with a stop-loss threshold of $275,000 for the period of July 1st, 2016 through August 31st, 2017, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Thorwart. 2-second overview.
I know I haven't got a chance to talk to Mr. Bialik. I know he had some questions on this. This is a contract we approve each year. It is our insurance to allow for excessively high claims for our health insurance to be paid and insured. So in the past, we've always had a threshold of $250,000, meaning if there's one claim with healthcare and prescription drug over a 12-month period that exceeds $250,000, our insurance company begins to pay us dollar for dollar so that we can't have a claim that exceeds that. We had 2 open enrollment periods in the past. For 12-month employees, it was July 1st through June 30th. And for the majority of our staff, the 10-month employees, it was from September 1st to August 31st. There's a complexity with the financing of it and complexity with the open enrollment and getting contracts properly recorded with IBC to the point where we discussed it as a administrative group, Christine, myself, and the data processing, and we said, can we change this? We spoke with Gallagher, our benefit consultant, and they said, yeah, sure, you can change that. What has occurred here now is that we want to set up the plan to be the same as their open enrollment and our self-insurance to be the same as of open enrollment. So for 1 year, we have asked for our stop-loss insurance to expand to 14 months rather than 12 months. If we were going to keep the threshold at $250,000, they originally were going to charge us a 10% increase and above what our normal increase would be. So as we looked at that, we looked and said, well, if we go up to $275,000, while we're increasing our months by 1/6 and we increase our threshold by $25,000, what would our increase go? And that went down to 4.6%, I believe. And for that reason, that is what we are recommending, is to go with the $275,000. I would expect next year, when it goes back to 12 months, we would go back to the $250,000. If you say to me, well, Bob, what's the decision model there? I do not want a lot of claims between $250,000 and $275,000, because that is the spread that I am concerned about, where if we got less, if we were going to pay more in premiums, and because we went up there, we didn't get refunded that amount of money, that's where my concern would be. But that is my decision model, and that's why I have suggested this. Our healthcare benefit consultants also agree with this decision.
Any questions for Mr. Ryan?
My question was cumulative cost. That's what I wanted to know. Because we had it by.
What's that?
The cumulative cost, the total cost. Because you have it at $16.99 per single contract and $37.59 per.
Yes.
For a family contract. And I know that we have a memo on it, and I just think the total increased cost should be in the motion.
We won't know
You won't know.
till people do their open enrollment and choose single or family.
Okay. Fine.
So, yeah, I mean, we could tell you what it is today, but you know how open enrollment works, right?
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's why it's not there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing no objections, I'd ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Mr. Grubb, number 8, please. Tree stumps.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it wasn't I move to award tree stump removal bid 16-34 to Greenscape Tree Services LLC at a cost not to exceed $13,100, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Violet. Any questions for Mr. Taylor? Hearing no objections, ask the secretary to record the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Mr. Violet, number 9, please.
I move to approve amendment number 9 to the facility service agreement with Aramark Management Services for the 2016-2017 school year at a cost not to exceed $2,352,680.04, subject to audit and solicitor's review.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. McKessie. This was discussed at the facilities meeting, I believe, in detail.
It was.
So are there any, given that, and that was public, are there any questions for Mr. Taylor? Any further discussion? Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before I?
Yeah, if I could just give some credit to Aramark, who I know has been here for quite some time. However, in an effort to reduce our budget and work within the constraints that we realized this year, we did reduce the Aramark staff to realize some savings for the maintenance budget. While doing so, Aramark has been extremely cooperative, a true partner, and while they did reduce the fees to the amount that was our goal number, in addition, they've entered into this amendment without increasing their fees at all. Generally, they increase their fees by the Act 1 index. It's a 0% increase. So the savings that we targeted are being realized in totality, plus the cost we would have spent for that Act 1 index. So really appreciate the teamwork and partnership that we've had with Aramark this year in working together.
That's great work, Doug. Any other questions? Ms. Thomas?
So I was pretty vocal at another contract we had when we tried to create a partnership for them about how they didn't understand the term partnership. They were a vendor, and that's all they were ever going to be. So I want to take an opportunity to second what Doug said from the board table about Aramark. For anybody who's listening from Aramark, they have presented themselves, as Doug said, as a true partner. And I think the whole board recognizes that. And since we were vocal in the negative, I think it's important to be vocal in the positive.
I apologize, I was out of the room. Did you speak about of why we were negative on
Yes.
something else?
Yes, to
Thank
the
you.
vendor as opposed to a partner.
Correct, thank you.
Okay, hearing no objections, I'd ask the secretary to pass the motion as passing with unanimous consent. Is anybody opposed to taking the next four together? Okay, Dr. Foster, if you could please read those four.
Wait, so where are we at?
Number 10?
10. You know, I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I move to approve the Newtown Land Development Agreement for the Newtown Middle School project between the Council Rock School District and Newtown Township as attached to this agenda, subject to audit and solicitor's review. I move to approve the Newtown Township Municipal Improvements Agreement, PLIGIT, for the Newtown Middle School project between the Council Rock School District and Newtown Township as attached to this agenda, subject to audit and solicitor's review. I move to approve the Northampton Township Land Development Agreement for the Holland Middle School Additions and Renovations Project between the Council Rock School District and the Northampton Township as attached to this agenda, subject to audit and solicitor's review. I move to approve the Northampton Township Municipal Improvements Agreement, PLIGIT, for the Holland Middle School Additions and Renovations Project between the Council Rock School District and Northampton Township as attached to this agenda, subject to audit and solicitor's review.
Mr. Taylor?
Did you get a second?
Second.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Ms. McKessie?
We did discuss these briefly as well at the facilities meeting. Generally, it's the agreement that outlines the discussions from the approvals from each governing authority, and the PLIGIT agreement for each is the security that supports that land development agreement. Any specific questions relative to the language of these, I would defer to Rob.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Taylor or Mr. Cox? Ms. Bywick, anything?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Please.
I will not be voting for these, and as I haven't voted for the projects as a whole.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Grubb?
I'm going to be voting no on these at this time. I understand the form of the contract and the agreement and the rationale behind it in terms of creating an escrow. I think it's premature. I am hopeful that as we define the values to be put in these, that our host communities will reflect upon the fact that we are also a taxing authority and working with the same citizens that they do, and include for us fees that are reasonable and responsible and reflective of their costs. And so until I know those costs and those values are finally negotiated, I would personally have deferred this, but I understand that there's a will of the board to move forward with it. So I'm confident that our host communities, recognizing the value of these schools, recognize the import of them to the community, both now and in the future, will cooperate and provide us an equitable and fair price that's reflective of its costs and expense. But until I see the numbers, I'm going to walk. So I'm going to say no.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Any other comment? Have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Bywick?
No.
Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grubb?
No.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mr. Tate?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Thorwart?
Yes.
Mr. Block?
Yes, motion passes 7-2. Is there any objection to taking the three together on number 11? Mr. Tate, please.
Number 11, I move to approve Board Policy 626, Federal Fiscal Compliance as contained in the attachment to this agenda. I move to approve Board Policy 626.1, Travel Reimbursement Federal Programs as contained in the attachment to this agenda. And finally, I move to approve Board Policy 827, Financial Conflict of Interest, as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second. Mr. Grubb, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tate? These were discussed at our policy meeting.
May 31st Policy Committee.
I have one question for our solicitor. You've reviewed them, you're good with them. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that.
Yes, they are PSBA forms that look fine to me.
Okay, thank you.
We're very appreciative of the structure we're trying at this time with this. These were published to the web, and Dr. Frazier, you sent a notice to the community for listserv approximately a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we did it twice, week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and then again, I guess it was a couple days ago, earlier this week.
And these were then, at that time, these were posted to the web where they were generally available to the public. And I think it's a good process. Let's see how it flies, and appreciate your taking the step out of the box and trying something new to do that.
Well, I'll give hats off to Mr. Tate for that, because it's his idea and his language, so I don't want to take any undue credit there. So nice job, Mr. Tate.
Any objections? Well, so hearing no objections, could the secretary please record the motions as passing with unanimous consent? Mr. Cox, Solicitor's Report, please.
Mr. Block, there was an executive session on the 13th regarding potential litigation. There was an executive session prior to tonight's meeting on personnel and labor matters. There will be an executive session following the meeting on personnel and potential litigation and an issue related to the acquisition of real estate. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll move to board items. Is there any old business? Is there any new business?
I have some new business.
All right.
Earlier this week, the American Academy of Pediatrics released a report that talked about how much sleep children need. And it's pretty scary because I would venture a guess and say pretty much none of our kids get as much sleep as they need. But I think there's a movement across the country that looks at the start times of schools. So I meant to bring this up when we talked about the new busing software that we were going to get. So my new business comment is two-part. One is, Bob, I would like you to talk to Andy in the review that he will ultimately do for looking for the greater efficiencies. I'd also like for him to have an eye for how we may, with minimal disruption, improve maybe the bell times at our schools or the busing schedules so that high school students aren't getting on buses at 6 o'clock in the morning, since the American Academy of Pediatrics says that teenagers should be getting 10 to 12 hours of sleep or whatever it was. Okay. So I'd like to keep an eye for that. And just for the knowledge of everybody else, the notion of starting our high school in particular at a later time to accommodate the health and well-being of students is something that has been on my mind for a while. And I have reached out to about a dozen other school districts in Bucks and Montgomery County to see where they may be on this issue, because changing the start time of our schools is hard to do in isolation, because we are one of 4 schools at a tech school because of the athletics that we participate in. If we could have some cooperation with some of our sister schools in the county or in other counties, that would certainly help. The feedback from the school districts that responded to me was mostly positive. There were actually just 1 or 2 districts that sort of said, no, not interested, because there was a perception that if we made high school start times later, it meant that elementary school kids would be standing at bus stops in the dark, which I don't think has to be the case. But the better part of the story was that there were 8 school districts who were open to varying degrees. And so it is my intention to just continue to talk to them, get feedback. Some of them are taking more active steps. And so maybe this is something that we as a district could move towards in conjunction with other schools But I think that this would be an important thing to keep our eye on.
Can I ask a question? 'Cause I think it's a great idea. When you spoke with other school districts, was that administration or was that full boards, individual boards? Just curious what.
I used contact information that was available on websites, and I contacted actually directly school board presidents.
Okay.
But because I just thought it was appropriate coming from a school director to another school director. It's interesting, not all school districts have as much information and contact, so I could not do that universally. There were some cases where it's a general board address, and the response I received was from a superintendent, which was interesting, but it was mostly school boards.
Got it. Thanks.
One more question on that. Mrs. Trioli, would that require a contract change? If we change the school start times around, would we have to change our CREA contracts, our CRESPA contracts?
Require a number of different steps with our staff. Contractually, there's a total number of hours that employees have to work. In the support group, there's specific contract language that if we change an employee's hours, we have to give them 30 days notice. So within the support staff, you have some flexibility to set working hours. With our teaching staff, I think the bigger question to think about, and Barry can certainly piggyback on this, is scheduling and what that would do to how teachers are scheduled, the number of periods that they have. We could work together if that's the direction the district wants to go in, and talk with our association about all of the tentacles. And then some of the other pieces to think about, just my initial reaction, are athletics and how that would play in with our secondary athletes, student athletes, coaches who are part of our staff.
And I just want to be clear, because in case I didn't position it properly, I did not communicate with anyone and say that Council Rock was committed to doing this. I made it very clear I was speaking for myself. I spoke to Dr. Frazier before I did that outreach. And it's really more on a fact-finding mission to understand if it's even something we can consider, because I don't believe that we can do it just if we all agreed to it. I mean, and if everything aligned, the teachers and the staff and everything worked out in and of itself, it's not as simple as that. So it was more for me to, it was a research mission more than anything else, to understand the context, to see if it's even something that we should be looking at. But because we are getting new software, maybe we can improve things for students without anything major changing.
Yep. That's good. Okay, any other new business? Okay, we'll go to the committee reports. Ms. Brooks, we'll stay with you.
We are on hiatus until the fall, so
Excellent.
there's nothing to report.
Facilities committee, we covered that tonight. Anything? Pretty extensively, didn't we? We did. Okay, we'll go to finance.
Finance is next week.
We'll go to policy, which we just covered. Anything else?
We didn't know. We'll be scheduling a committee meeting later this summer.
Great. Dr. Foster, Ms. Thomas, anything from MBIT?
So tonight, and this is something that Mrs. Thomas had mentioned before, we did have a welding teacher get the Teacher of the Year Award for Technical Education across the state of Pennsylvania. And tonight, he's having his banquet in Harrisburg. So
Great.
that's Paul Carney. Hopefully, it's a good experience for him in Harrisburg tonight. And then at the last meeting, at the beginning of it, we had some pretty good presentations. One was on our NOCTI scores across the different programs. And we have pretty high scores. So, you know, it's, and I can't remember the exact acronym, but basically you get certifications in your specialty. So if it's welding or culinary, you go through an exam that certifies you as competent in the practice of that art. And so it can be things like public safety, CPR, firefighting. So these are big deal exams that say you're qualified to do that job. It's a real milestone. And so 92% of the students taking those exams qualified as advanced or proficient. So it's a really outstanding accomplishment for NBIT. But some of the programs are 100%. And the question is why is that? And so there was a bit of analysis and a discussion about how some of the programs kind of work as a group and a cluster. So, and that's pretty easy to do across plumbing or building construction, carpentry. And so they actually have the practice of meeting as a group every week and talking about the kind of contents that's going to be on the NOC for them and kind of cross-training. And that seems to be working well. So they're trying to think, well, what can they do in the other programs to make it work? And then there was a discussion of adult education. And it was, I think, educational for us because I didn't realize there's about 40 different employers in the area that make use of education for their employees using the MBIT facilities and the staff there. So that's pretty cool. But they're always looking for new ideas, how to connect to the community, how to provide adult education opportunities that people want and that will make a difference in the community. So it's a nice presentation. That's all I really wanted to talk about.
Thank you. Ms. McKesson, anything from the IU?
We meet next Tuesday evening.
Excellent. Mr. Bialik, Council Rock Education Foundation liaison.
Well, Ms. Brooks is the chair of the nominating committee, and she let me know that if you're a member of the public and you want to get involved in the Council Rock Education Foundation, there are opportunities to serve on the board of directors. So contact Ms. Brooks and submit your name. And if you have any interest, get involved. It's a fun group. I often say that it's the most fun thing that I do as a board member here. It's not as stuffy and boring as these meetings we have here. And it really does great things for the school and the community as a whole. So I encourage people to get involved. Thank you.
Second round of public comment.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I'd like to say happy anniversary to my fellow committee members of the capital planning. It's almost 2 years and 2 days since we made the recommendation our committee did to close an elementary school and the only committee that recommended closing Richborough Middle. But if you had taken that recommendation or at least voted on it, you would be having $2 million more in your budget starting in 2017. Because you're closing Richborough Middle, you're going to realize some of that savings in 2018. And that savings is almost equal to what a track would cost at Holland Middle. But we have on the record right now 6 board members, Mr. Grubb, Ms. McKenzie, Mr. Tate.
I'm sorry, it's Grubb.
Mr. Thorwart, Mrs. Thomas, and Mr. Block, who are not in favor of moving ahead with building tracks at this time for different and various reasons. But what you are in favor of is keeping the middle school students practicing on a substandard, under substandard conditions. That's what you're in favor of. So, you know me, just because you said no doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying. It took me years and years and years to get those trailers off. It took me 5 years of solid lobbying to get South built. So I will not stop with this because I believe if there's a will, there's a way. And I think the way is obvious for Holland. You move the field, you build the track. And I think there's a way for Newtown. I just found out you could make the straightaways shorter and the roundabouts, a little longer, and you could still have a regulation track at Newtown. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. I think there's a way to pay for it too. I think there's a way out of capital funds and a lot of ways not to adverse the taxpayers. I'd also like to say at this time that I hope you put something different on the TV all summer. I was channel surfing and I saw what I suggested being done at another school district. They had upper bucks, each teacher telling what they did at their technical school. Please do something about the TV channel. And I'd have to say happy summer to everyone, especially the administrators and the teachers. And I know you'll be working hard over the summer to bring good things for Council Rock, and I thank you for that.
Hey, I'm Bill Foster from Newtown Borough, and I thank the school board for providing this public forum for free speech. So I ran for school board 5 years ago, and I carried around with me house to house this little spreadsheet. It's the same one that I carried house to house. And I showed people what was coming in the pension crisis, the massive increases we were going to face. And I said, we're going to have to make decisions. We're going to have to plan ahead. We're going to need to make cuts and decide what our revenues should be. And so I joined the board, and I approach it like any problem, any rational person would. I say, okay, I come to board meetings. There seems to be a little inefficiency in how we use our time. So I engage in a discussion. We need to have goals as a board. And I advocate for capital planning, a way to restructure the district to reduce the costs. And I work in the finance committee to look at our revenue. Because when the state is adding $2.5 million a year over year to your budget because of pension, you're going to have to raise revenue. I advocated for benchmarking against Central Bucks, a much more efficient district that has test scores as good or better than ours. And on all fronts, I'm sad to report to the folks that sent me here as I carried this around, I've had tremendous failures. The board to this day still doesn't have an effective goal process. We have goals, but they're state mandated goals for the superintendent. So I have to say there's a case where state mandates actually have worked, but the board is bigger than the superintendent, and we still don't have a functional goal process. So how does the board spend its time? Well, we could have been dealing with what we knew was coming with the pension. We talked about small one-time costs for hours on end. We talked about prom contracts, class rings, water pipes under fields. These were completely minutia compared to what we were facing. We didn't restructure the district in a timely fashion. We had a great recommendation from the planning committee, and we didn't follow it. So now anything we do on that front is not going to be effective in dealing with the crisis at hand. Finance, we ended up not listening to our advice from the business administrator. Thou shalt not use fund balance to meet reoccurring costs. And we didn't listen to his advice that if you wait for fund balance to go down, it's going to be too late. Benchmarking, we still haven't done it. We still don't know all the reasons why Central Bucks is a more efficient school district. So I've been profoundly disappointed in my 5 years on the school board, and I'm going to have to go to the community and try to help them understand that the board needs help. The board needs to do a better job. Thank you.
Is there any board or any other further public comment?
Richard Abramson, Newtown Township. Didn't expect to be here tonight, but when I found out that I could make it, I went online and I read the agenda. Reading the agenda, I also read the policies for the first time, even though I realized they've been up for a while. But I just read them for the first time hours before the meeting. And I'd be remiss if I didn't come here telling you some problems I have with those policies. And I don't care that the policy was drafted by PSBA or not, because Mark Klein, I think you too, Jerry, we've changed wording of PSBA drafted policies. We don't rubber stamp them. So here's some problems I have with them. I expect and I hope that you will agree with me with some of the changes that I would ask you to make to the policies that were approved tonight. Policy 827, the last paragraph says that there may be possible imprisonment for violation of the policy. Where do we have in any policy a wording that a violation of a school board policy may result in imprisonment? I have a real problem with that, and I hope you would also. Also in 827, it's just, I think was an oversight, but the words domestic partner was not included in the definition of immediate family after the word spouse. So you're including a spouse, but you're not including a domestic partner, whereas domestic partner was included with regard to the domestic partners of the children, of your children or your parents. So I think that was just an oversight, but to wrap things up there, I think you should include it. Policy 620, I have a real problem. It says, Dr. Fraser, with all due respect, you know I admire you, I respect you, but it says that the superintendent may approve additional procedures as an attachment to the policy. No, the superintendent should not be able to attach anything to the policy without board approval. If he wants to make procedures to implement the policy, that's what you have administrative regulations for. And I would hope that you would put them in the administrative regulations as opposed to attaching them to a board policy. But if you do attach them to a board policy, Dr. Fraser, please get the board approval ahead of time. So that's, in a nutshell, my problems with those, with 827 and 620. While I'm here, I listened to part of the committee meeting that was not videotaped, but it was audio. Sometimes you have two people talking at the same time, and sometimes you can't tell. Well, I could recognize your voices, but others may not be able to. So a suggestion. My suggestion would be that the chairperson acknowledge the person that is speaking by name, so anybody who's listening will know who is speaking. And that would also alleviate two people talking at the same time, because it's hard to understand when two people are talking at the same time, especially when we only have audio and not video. So that's my suggestions. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Any other public comment? Is there any board comment? Yes. Mr. Grubb?
Mr. Abramson, thanks for your comments. You know, as we put the policies up, the policies are not cast in stone. They are something that we find a defect, we can change it at time. Your reference to the discussion about imprisonment, it does not say, let me be very clear, that the school board will be the authority who will be dictating the imprisonment. Those policies are largely based on constructs coming out of the federal government now and relate to the reporting of expenses and compensation and various other competitive situations. So while the board's policy references that their violation of the policy may result in imprisonment, it is because the board's policy is specifically referencing sections of federal code that carry with them a possible imprisonment. So please recognize that we have not begun to imprison people that I know of. And the second thing is, I look at Mr. Cox, it's an interesting question about domestic partners. And I wonder if Pennsylvania has a domestic partners law, because lacking a legal definition of a domestic partner or some form of declaration for that, I wonder if that would apply in the state.
My friend and former client, Mr. Abramson, sent me an email today with referencing several of the comments that he just made. These were many of the same arguments we had over the years when Mr. Abramson chaired the policy committee. I think reasonable people can disagree about how various policies should read. With respect to policy 827, a lot of the language, much of the language that's set forth in that policy comes directly out of the statute, the state statute known as the Ethics Act. The Ethics Act sets forth possible criminal punishment for violations of it, so that's where that language comes from. And the statute itself does not refer to domestic partnerships. So Mr. Abramson always brings a lot. I did not think it necessary to amend the policies in the way he suggested.
Thank you. Is there any other board comment? Meeting adjourned.